Hi everyone, I'm Lior Vered. I'm the policy advocate with Toxic Free NC, and we are here with Debbie Roos, who is the North Carolina Extension Agent for Chatham County. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about you and about your role?
Sure, thanks, Lior. Yes, as she said, I'm Debbie Roos. I'm one of the agriculture agents here with Cooperative Extension. We have several. We've got a lot of ag happening in the county. So my role is working with small farmers doing commercial vegetable production, cut flowers and other horticultural crops. And I work with beekeepers and forestry landowners as well, and farmers markets. So I really have a lot of neat things I get to do that I enjoy. Of course, my role with the beekeepers is what led me into being very interested in pollinators and pollinator conservation. So I've expanded that to be a large part of my programming as well.
Cool. So the next question you kind of answered, but I'll ask anyway if you want to add. What is your connection to pollinators?
Well, hopefully we all feel connected to pollinators, and we all are. Professionally, my role is in my work with beekeepers. I realized probably about 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information out there on honey plants for bees. And so I thought, oh, well, I can help with that. You know, I can develop some resources. My idea was to make a website because I enjoy doing that. I enjoy taking pictures. So I was going to develop a photo database of honey plants for North Carolina that were appropriate for the Piedmont. And very quickly, as I started researching all of that and developing a photo database, I very quickly became interested in not just honey plants for honeybees, but in just native pollinators as well, you know, native bees and other pollinators. And so my love and interest in this topic just really grew and grew over time. You know, in the world, we're all connected to pollinators because we rely on them to pollinate much of the food that we eat. We wouldn't starve to death without bees, but we would have a very boring diet. You know, a lot of our favorite foods, you know, a lot of the very flavorful fruits and vegetables that provide us a lot of really good nutrients. Those are pollinated by bees and other insects, and some things like coffee and you know, chocolate rely on pollinators. So, and any of us who enjoy wildlife and seeing songbirds and wildlife in our yards, they're also eating fruits and berries and things that are pollinated by bees and other insects. So we're all connected.
I couldn't agree more. How did the Chatham Pollinator Garden began?
Well, as I was developing, you know, kind of the background information, doing the research on the appropriate plants for our region and developing that photo database, I was very fortunate to get some grant money from a private foundation that allowed me to put in a demonstration garden. And I really thought that would be a great teaching tool for people to be able to see pollinator habitat. And I have to say, the one I put in at Chatham Mills, which I call the Pollinator Paradise Garden, that was planted in 2008. So it's in its 12th or 13th year. It's vastly exceeded any expectations I had as a teaching tool because you know, it's expanded over time. It's taught me so much, and it attracts visitors from all over the southern region. You know, they come from out of state to see it, which has really been surprising, and it's become a great passion of mine to care for it and learn from it myself, and to share it with others and inspire gardeners and beekeepers and farmers on how to do this. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times when I was down in Chatham County, and it's really beautiful. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
So what should people know about the garden?
Well, so normally, as I mentioned, it's used as a teaching tool. So normally not COVID-19 years. It's open to the public. It's still open to the public now because it's on property that's open to the public 24/7. But I'm not doing any in-person programming right now. But normally I give tours and conduct workshops from it. But people can come on their own. I also have built a big website around it. So you can learn a lot about the garden while not even seeing the garden. So kind of at a distance or virtually. I've got plant lists and thousands of photographs and resources on the website. And it's a really easy URL to remember, carolinapollinatorgarden.org. But as far as the garden itself, it's got over 220 unique species of trees and shrubs and perennials and grasses and vines. And I'm really proud to say that 85% of them are native to North Carolina. That was really important to me as well, to really showcase what we can do with native plants that are available from our wonderful local nurseries. We manage it completely organically. And I also have a very, if you note that I said we, I don't do it by myself. I've got cultivated a really remarkable group of volunteers that helps me in the garden, and I definitely could not do it without them. But we do everything organically, and that's another lesson that I like to show people from the garden. You don't have to use pesticides. Matter of fact, if you're creating pollinator habitat, it doesn't do a lot of good to create habitat if you're not going to be careful with pesticides and really try to avoid them whenever possible. So I like to teach people about that as well, like even showing off some of the pests that we have in the garden and how they're a great food source for all the beneficial insects we have in the garden. And you don't have to freak out every time you see a pest insect and try to kill it. It's good to learn. It's good to learn what are the pests, what are the insects, what are the interactions, when are things in balance and when are things out of balance. So there's just a lot of really cool things you can see in a pollinator garden, and it's not that hard. It does take some maintenance, but we don't use any kind of fertilizer or pesticides. Small correction, the only pesticide I've ever used there is an organically approved fire ant treatment. We do get fire ants and they can be a problem, but other than that, we don't use anything.
Thank you. What type of pollinators do you usually see in your garden?
How much time do you have? So that's the thing. I love, and again, myself, I love learning new butterflies and bees every year. We have over 560 species of bees that are native to North Carolina, and we see a lot of them right there. Like right now, I'm seeing so many bumblebees, and we do have honeybees in town. We've got hives around the garden. But so many different butterflies. We've already had, it's mid-June now. We're in our second generation of monarch caterpillars. We've had, pipe vine caterpillars, and of course the swallowtails and the variegated fritillary. So it's just really neat to see the progression through the season of the different butterflies and their host plants, and but just lots of different bees and butterflies and other critters out there, and other I get some critters like Carolina anoles that I love to see, and spiders and things are all welcome.
Nice. What have you learned from tending to the garden?
Wow, I've learned so much. So my academic background is in vegetable production. So I did not have a lot of experience with ornamentals. I had certainly done a bee garden in my own house here because I used to keep bees here. But other than that, I had no experience designing a large garden. So I have learned to do that. And I love to tell people that, to just do it. You don't have to be intimidated by that process. The garden is a great teaching tool. I did start small, kind of relatively speaking. It may not seem small to some people, but the garden as you see it now is probably about 3 times the size of the original garden that I installed in 2008. So over time, as I became more confident in my skills and just learned new things, I learned new plants and how to combine them and how to care for them. It just, all that knowledge and experience grew over time for myself, because again, my experience was predominantly with vegetables. So I've learned a lot more about gardening, a lot more about plants. I love learning new plants every year. I was telling people on Facebook the other day, I do a lot of engagement on social media. I usually have a couple of plant crushes every year. So these are new plants that I'm learning that I've never planted before. And I was posting the other day about basil bee balm. It's a native Monarda that I've just fallen in love with. It's really beautiful. So every year I'm learning new plants. Every year I'm learning new butterfly species, possibly some new native bee species. It's amazing what you can learn if you plant a garden, whether it's in your backyard or wherever. You never have to leave that garden. There's so much going on there, with all the interactions between plants and insects. I've always believed that. You don't have to go in a faraway exotic location to see really cool stuff. You can just spend time in your own backyard. And if you really, really look, you'll see some neat things. A lot of the photos I share, people will say, how did you even see that? Or, how did you know that was there? And the thing is, when you're intimately knowledgeable about a garden, your garden, you notice when things are out of place or different. And that helps you learn, spot insects that you may have never seen before that most people would walk right by. And as an example, I remember a button bush one year, and I love that button bush. It's one of my favorite plants. It's a shrub. And one year as I was walking by, what caught my eye is that a leaf was folded up, and I noticed it because it's a lighter color. And then I saw some really neat insects, around that when I walked over to it. So just little things like that. If you pay attention, you'll learn a lot.
Do you have any advice that you'd like to share with people who are interested in planting their own pollinator garden?
So I do like to encourage people to start small. If you have an existing garden, which most people do have some, fashion of perennials and trees and shrubs in their yard, maybe try to think about what is the dearth period of bloom in your area? Like, when do you not see a lot of things blooming? And think about species that you can add to fill that gap. Because for pollinators, you really want to aim for having a long season of bloom from early spring to late fall. Typically, that dearth period of bloom for North Carolina is in the middle of summer. So I've got resources on my website that can help you identify species that are blooming, throughout this season. I have a what's in bloom list where I catalog and photograph everything blooming at that time, and I update it every 2 weeks. And that's archived back about 10 years. So that's a good way to start. You already have. If you're talking about a new garden, then again, start small. Use organic practices. You want to have a minimum of 3 different species blooming in every season. That's just a minimum. So, 3 in the spring, 3 in the summer, 3 in the fall. And so I think if you can do that, and really, really what you're aiming for is having a diversity of blooms. So think about all the different pollinators we have, from butterflies with the long proboscis to bees. You got short-tongued bees, long-tongued bees. You got tiny little pollinators with, tiny mouth parts that are able to access very shallow flowers. You've got things with the long tongues that can access deeper flowers. So the point of that is have a lot of different types of flowers, and that'll help you attract, different pollinators, a nice diversity. So different color, shapes, and sizes of blooms throughout the season. And I think if you can do those things, you'll do well. We are pretty fortunate to have some good native plant nurseries in the area. I've got them listed on my website. So there's no, we used to have more than we do now, unfortunately, but we've still got a pretty good selection, depending on where people are, if they can search out nurseries and find some of these species.
So we also know that you have a photography business. I was wondering if you would be willing to share a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. That's my little side hustle, I guess. I just love taking pictures and sharing them. Usually I'm sharing them on, Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. I don't even know. So I do a wholesale card business. It's purely wholesale to, Weaver Street and Durham Co-op and the Botanical Garden and places like that, Saxapahaw. So it's just a fun thing to do. And they're usually, I have about probably 80 different cards. They're mostly blank, and pollinators and farms and flowers, things like that.
Hmm. And do you have any advice or tips for people who want to learn how to photograph pollinators?
Well, so be patient. You don't really need a fancy camera. I mean, I use a DSLR with a macro lens for a lot of my photography, but I also use my phone. My favorite trick is if I see a cool bee or a butterfly that I want. So your tendency is to try to get as close to it as you can get before you take a picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the time, by that time, it's gone. Because it sees this big human lugging toward it. So, I always take a picture whenever I first spot something, no matter how bad I think the picture is going to be. At least I will have a picture, of that question mark butterfly before it leaves. It may not be great, but it may be okay. And then I slowly move closer to the subject, taking pictures along the way, and hopefully I'm able to get close enough to it to get some really cool pictures. But if I start by taking that initial picture, then at least I'll have something. And whether it's, and it may just be something for my own information that I can use. But at least I'll have something instead of waiting until the end, until I get just the perfect spot. And by that time, that butterfly is like, see you later. So I like to always share that tip with people. I've learned that the hard way, trust me. Of things leaving before, by the time I get up to them, they're just so gone. Some butterflies I've noticed are very wary of humans, but others really don't mind if you get close. And bees are usually so busy, getting nectar and pollen, they don't really care how close you get to them. They're pretty laid back about that.
That's awesome to learn about the different personalities of different pollinators.
But really, it's a lot of patience. I take a lot of bad pictures, just take pictures. Just get out there, take pictures in all conditions. I like taking pictures in the rain because you get to see all the little hidey places of the bees. As a matter of fact, you're going to laugh at this. I just ordered myself a hands-free umbrella. So I can operate my camera under, because usually I'm trying to hold an umbrella and work my camera. But you'd be surprised at when you can get some good photos. It doesn't have to be perfect conditions. You can see unusual things, at different times of the day under different weather conditions.
That's awesome. I think that's all the questions that I've had. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to share or say.
One thing I forgot to mention is I do have a top 25 native pollinator plants list on my website that I've developed. You can also go to the website and download the list of plants in the garden. But because it's so long, 220 species and kind of overwhelming, that's why I developed that shorter list. And a lot of people like to use it to go to nurseries. If you have those plants in your garden, you're doing great. But again, the website is carolinapollinatorgarden.org. It's part of my Growing Small Farms portal, which is a cooperative extension website, but that URL just helps people find it. But there's a lot of information on the website. I'm going to hope to start posting more virtual tours where you don't have to be there in person. I furloughed my volunteers this year, for about 6 weeks due to the COVID situation. So I was managing the garden by myself in the spring. So I got really behind because it's a very large garden. So I haven't been able to do any of the virtual tours yet, but I have been posting slideshows for every 2 weeks and keeping the What's in Bloom list updated. So people can come on their own at any time. It's open 24/7. You're welcome to come and visit the garden and bring your camera.
Awesome. That's great.
Well, thanks for thinking of me. I appreciate it. And
yeah,
it was a lot of fun to talk with you.
Yeah, this was awesome. This was really great. Yeah, I feel like you had a lot of really good information and really good perspective to share. So I'm really excited about this.
Well, thank you, Leo. I appreciate it. And thanks for doing it. And have a great weekend.
You too. You too.
All right. Let me know if
Bye.
you have any follow-up questions.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.